hello, assalamu alaikum, namaste, sat sri akal, and Anjali Mudra. Welcome to our show Diaspora Voices, and today we will be talking about the activities which have and initiatives which have emerged after the August 5th, 2019, the day when Indian government, led by BJP, the BJP Indian government used the democratic tools to suppress any whatever autonomy was there for Jammu and Kashmir. They abrogated the Article 370 and 35A, which secured some sort of autonomy, and particularly the land rights for the people of the Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. They separated Ladakh from Jammu and Kashmir and reduced the status of Jammu and Kashmir from a state to a union territory. And they did that, in the presence of around 1 million Indian soldiers in Jammu and Kashmir, where about 700,000 to 800,000 soldiers were already there to crush the resistance movement for against the Indian occupation, in particularly focusing or centering Kashmir Valley, and they sent more troops to prevent any reaction against this action by Indian government, which they kept secret till the last moment. And when they made those announcements, troops were everywhere. The communication was blockaded. Internet, telephone, all forms of communication were gagged, silenced. So and they did it in the name of democracy and development and freedom, and all that terminology they used to do all this. And of course, in reaction to that, Kashmiris all over the world came out and protested against that in whatever ways and forms was possible, all over the world, in America, in Europe, in Britain, Canada, and all other countries where our Kashmiri diaspora is, exists or present. And there were a number of initiatives which, obviously there were some spontaneous protests and reactions, but then there were some of those protests and the reaction evolved or developed into different initiatives. And one of those initiatives was Red for Kashmir. And Red for Kashmir was initiated, I think, from America, and then it was connected with the different Kashmiris in different parts of the world. And there were many questions: what is Red for Kashmir, and why red, and all that. But this continued, and people from different walks of life started playing their role in different arenas, in public space and social media, in parliaments, in protest places, everywhere. And now, when on this August 5, 2021, after 2 years of what Modi government did, there are activities being planned and organized by different Kashmiri initiatives across the world. And Red for Kashmir is actually growing into a symbol of resistance, particularly amongst diaspora. And today I have two key people in Red for Kashmir who I will ask them how and when they joined this initiative, and they will tell us all about this initiative. And I have with me virtually Mary Scully and Bidwell. Claire Bidwell in Scotland, and Mary is in USA, and they both have been active in to raise the voice of Kashmiris in different arenas, two arenas maybe where Kashmiris had little access before 2019, August 2019. And why is interesting and ironic that while Modi government took this action to suppress the voice of Kashmiris, and they justified this within BJP and amongst general Indian public that Kashmir issue is Pakistan is internationalizing it, and those people sponsored by Pakistan are internationalizing it. So we need to end that internationalizing aspect of this issue. But it actually, it had a contrary effect. And today, perhaps Kashmiris who is more internationalized than ever. So I welcome Mary Scully and Claire Bidwell. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us.
Delighted.
Okay, so let's start with the basic question: what is Red for Kashmir? Because I'm sure this question has been asked, put to you, both of you, many times, but still, I think a lot of people who still don't know.
Well, we actually didn't know ourselves until recently. When the shutdown happened in 2019 in August, Red for Kashmir became an internet slogan, and we just learned that it emerged from the group Stand with Kashmir, which is a diaspora group, an international group, I believe, and they formulated this campaign called Red for Kashmir. It didn't have any particular meaning. Other groups like the Rohingya use black for Rohingya. So it didn't have any particular meaning, except it could represent the blood of Kashmiri martyrs. But it was really just a way to, as they put it, get everybody to do the same thing at the same time for Kashmir. And what made it so prominent was that there were, at that time, quite spontaneously, there were hundreds of demonstrations of hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. Japan, New Zealand, several in the United States, Times Square at the UN when Modi was there, all over England, all over many of the dominantly Muslim countries. And what we saw was that they came wearing red. Not all of them, but many of them came wearing red. They had big red placards, and this Red for Kashmir became sort of a theme. So it didn't really represent anything except it was Stand with Kashmir's attempt to unify, have a unifying theme for solidarity. And so when we decided to try to initiate this campaign, it was we were drawing on that tradition of was red as the color of solidarity with Kashmir. It could be blue. The Hindutva crowd on social media have tried to do blue for Kashmir and red for Kashmir and purple. We're all for that. We're for every color of the rainbow in solidarity with Kashmir. We don't care. But this was the color.
It can be all colors. Can be any color. All colors.
Yeah. Whichever draws the most number of people to stand with Kashmir.
Yeah. So, but what are the kind of key aims of this group? And then I will go to Claire, how she became part of it. But what are the key aims of this group?
Well, the main thing is that what we've seen over the last many years is that if we rely on spontaneous opposition and solidarity with these struggles for freedom, the Palestinians, the Uyghur, the Rohingya, the Kashmiris, the many other people struggling for freedom, if we rely on spontaneity, they happen every several years. It hasn't been from 2014 to 2021 when there were massive international protests for Palestinians. There have been no massive protests for Kashmir since 2019, none for the Rohingya since 2017, and I don't believe any for the Uyghur at any point, and for all the other anti-colonial struggles. So we thought that in an age of genocide, you can no longer rely on spontaneous outbursts of opposition, that we have to organize it, to my mind, on the model of the anti-Vietnam War movement, which did not rely on spontaneity, but coordinated an international movement that called demonstrations. It was twice a year. I'm sorry. We called demonstrations twice a year, and we call like clockwork. We organized them, whether they would be local or international, or how the character of those actions was coordinated by the movement, by decision-making bodies. And so we think that in an age of genocide, it's no longer possible to leave it up to spontaneity. We have to begin, and I think Kashmiris, activists around the world are leading the way. We have to begin to coordinate this, make a movement that is coordinated, consistent, that is there every year, twice a year on emergency bases, in order to build solidarity with Kashmiris, to unite with Palestinians, with the Rohingya, with the Uyghur, to make this anti-colonial struggle united and coordinated and consistent. That's I think our main goal in all of this. No longer relying on just spontaneity.
Okay. We will discuss what has been done so far. But before that, let's ask Claire, how did she become part of this?
I think it is, as Mary pointed out, a lot of our work is about collaboration and working together. And I think Mary and I, between us, had kind of noticed that the Kashmiri voices were getting a little bit quieter, and we felt quite despondent. And it was just, I think, a little message from Mary one night that said, Claire, what do you think, about X, Y, Z? And I was just like, Mary, this sounds incredible. And we reached out to other people on Kashmiri's advices and what did they think. And it was a big, let's go for this, we can do this. And I think it was really important to Mary and I that, and others beyond that, this is the Kashmiri's voice. This is the Kashmiri's voice coming out, because they're so clamped and they can't, they can reach out to us in different ways, but we're not seeing them internationally. Their voices are silenced, the journalists are silenced, and can't get out. They're restricted at every level. I think we've seen, like Rana Ayub last week was threatened with jail over a tweet. So they're all silenced. And I think as well, to touch on the red, I think it was strong at the time in terms of, it made me think of like traffic lights, a kind of a stop, alert, danger. And I think it just kind of tapped into everything. And thankfully, and it was very much about fanning the flames again of this. It was already out there. It had come from the Kashmiris, not from us, not anybody else sort of dictating their voice, just giving that opportunity. And so people have then embraced it and taken it on. And, we're really hoping that what will happen is activists, and it is happening, but activists in their own right, organizations in their own right, will take this forward. So all the power and energy and voice that they've got behind them, that they've spent, campaigning, let's unite it all together. And, and that's really important. And then, of course, as Mary said, we're reaching out, Palestinian activists are very much behind this. And it's a united effort based on, you know, essentially the economy in our world is placed as important above the human rights of people, and we're all on board to stand forward. So it's kind of, you know, it started small in its aims in let's raise the Kashmiri voice. We want to reach beyond the Kashmiri diaspora and beyond the Kashmiris. There's some excellent work going in at all levels, you know, diplomatic levels, street marches, talking, but we have to somehow find a way to bring that out. And I think that is an ultimate aim for us all as well, to really raise this up. We know that, you know, the Indian lobby, they have such a strong hold over the media, and so things aren't being released in the way that they normally would be. You know, I'm sorry to say that when all these protests were going off around the 5th of August, I wasn't aware of them. I didn't become aware of the crisis until towards the end of August. And, you know, so I hadn't seen them in my papers. I hadn't seen them on the telly. I wasn't aware of the issue at that point. So we've got to, that's the next step for us, really. We have to, this resistance has to be raised, and we need to somehow find a way to get it out. And I think this was, you know, the ideal thing to raise up. And like I say, people have really embraced it. We're really pleased that, you know, it's really growing. And I think, you know, that's why there's people from all different political ideologies joining into this and celebrating this, because they know that the most important crucial level is the human rights, and it's that we're trying to highlight and bring to the table, because of, you know, this is people's lives, and we've said before, we only get, as far as we're mainly aware, one life on this earth, and why should people have to live with it like that? It doesn't make sense. So like I say, this is kind of very simple in its concept, but can actually be huge in the impact that it could have.
Okay, before before moving on, I would like to share this poster with our viewers, because there are a few activities taking place on 10th of July, and here is this. There are details of these. You know, 10th of July is seen as Martyrs' Day. It celebrates the martyrdom of Burhan Wani, and there are different activities on 10th of July, Saturday. There's a protest in New York, Tehran, Toronto, Islamabad, Srinagar, London, Berlin, Kuala Lumpur, Melbourne, Riyadh, Doha, Auckland, Dubai. So all these places, people are organizing protests to remember not only Burhan Wani, but all people who struggle and gave their lives for the freedom of Kashmir, fighting against occupation. And coming back to Mary, you know, what has been your experience so far? You know, when exactly you became involved, and what is your experience so far?
Well, you know, there's been a pretty concentrated news blackout about Kashmir for decades. I really, if you asked me about Kashmir 10 years ago, I would have said, you mean the wool? I would not have known it was a state in India. I didn't know anything about it. But I've been a political activist and a political writer since 1966 in several social movements. And one of them was the Palestinian struggle. So I use social media mostly to write about the Palestinian struggle, the struggles of many indigenous tribes, the environmental struggles, you know, any struggles of the oppressed, I write about. And so after the 2014 siege of Gaza, Kashmiri activists began friending me on social media, and they said to me, they badgered me, why don't you need to study our struggle and you need to write about it like you do the Palestinian struggle? And I said, yeah. And they said, no, you need to write about our struggle, and you need to write about it. And they badgered me for months and months. And so finally I said, enough already. I'll take the time to study, because I'm not good. I'm a great believer in doing your homework. I'm not good at just talking off the top of my head. So I said, I'll take some time, I'll take some months, and study this. So I went to the University of Texas, the local branch, and I spent several months in the library going through their library of books on Kashmir, which were inadequate, to say the least, the scholarship that was available to me. But I got interested, and so I began studying, and eventually I got it. I got it because it's so clearly an anti-colonial struggle, so clearly has so many affinities with the Palestinian struggle and the Rohingya struggle, which I was already writing about. And so I got a lot of help from Kashmiri activists, who were the ones who were badgering me, who kept sending me links and articles and references to books and things. And so I just learned this now in my archives on Facebook. In 2015 is when I began writing seriously about the Rohingya struggle. And at that time, there were not many people outside Kashmir. Kashmiri activists were very active on social media, were brilliant on social media, pioneering social media in defense of the oppressed. But there weren't a lot of non-Kashmiris. And so I began writing about it. And in that way, it got some attention, because I was already a writer about the Palestinian and the Rohingya struggle. So that's how I became involved. And then, like Claire, an understanding of what's happening to the Kashmiri people and about the power and the strength of their resistance movement, this makes you committed to that struggle. We wanted to not be their voices. We did not want to speak for them. We wanted to make it possible for their voices to be heard. And I think that's how Claire and I and other non-Kashmiri activists see this, is that we are not speaking for them. It's too complicated a struggle for us to be able to do that. We want to make sure that their voices are heard. And could I say, I don't mean to be a blabbermouth, but could I say one more thing about Red for Kashmir Day? When the shutdown took place in 2019, it was very devastating to be, first of all, cut off from Kashmiris and from all sources of information, but to know that they were cut off from us, that when this massive international movement of solidarity was developing, when there were marches in red all over the world, from Tokyo to New York City to London, that they did not know that was going on. So it must have been so devastating and so isolating for a Kashmiri at home to think that they were just left to suffer this on their own. And I remember that a Kashmiri friend of mine who lives in Kashmir came out from the country to do some business. And he messaged me and he said, we didn't know anybody was paying attention. Anybody was talking about what's happening to us. And so the first thing I did was come to your wall to see if you were still writing about us. And he said, it's so heartening to us to know that we are not forgotten. And so I don't think this is personal. I think that most of us share this. I think this time, when there is no telecommunications lockdown, that what we're really glad about is that Kashmiris are able to witness, because they are being silenced. They're being silenced on social media. They're being silenced through protests and in all sorts of forms. That Kashmiris can see that there is an international movement forging around solidarity with them, that they don't stand alone, and that they can witness it for the first time. They didn't see, you know, the thousands of people outside the United Nations when Modi was in town being treated like a rock star. They didn't see Times Square filled with red banners and red t-shirts. They didn't see that. And so it's kind of personally thrilling for me to see that, to know that for this time, they will see that what's happening on their behalf, to have their voices heard.
You're on mute, Shams.
You're on mute, Cham.
Yeah. Okay, we will go into details of activities which are organized for August the 5th. But before that, let's hear out from Claire what her experiences have been so far, because you've been involved in this for at least 2 years now.
3, coming up to 2 years. I think possibly if I spoke about all my experiences, Shams, we might be here till tomorrow. So
I know. Just pick the few.
She's the
Sorry, go on.
I think. Thank you, Mary. I think essentially, you know, as you know, the background, we held the idea of holding a solidarity event around the world for, you know, based on tea. We wanted every country, a member of the country, to join, and we had that event with you and JKTV online, so we were able to honour that. We do still hope to get on ground one day, but I think like Mary went to the library, I went online and I traveled the country, meeting Kashmiri activists and, you know, finding it through that way. And as people have said before, very often this journey, it's what you learn in the process. It's not just the event that you're having, it's that process. So I think at that point, Mary reached out to me. Somebody had given me her contact, made me aware of Mary, and either I contacted Mary or vice versa. And it was really nice because it was very encouraging. And I think, as Mary said, you recognize somebody that has the same feeling or thinking. And so it was lovely to be kind of embraced and taken seriously and understood. The same with Karen in Canada. She also reached out to me, who works for Justice for Peace. And so it was making all these connections. You know, Chams, I know I met up with yourself and we had the discussions and we're introduced to other people on other steps. So for me, for all the work I've been doing as the Kashmiri activist, was working at Unity. You know, I've been down at Parliament, I've been at many demonstrations, I've travelled to Pakistan and tried to get into Kashmir, didn't quite make it, unfortunately, but making lots of links. So that's brought us to this stage when we were able to take forward the Red for Kashmir. I had, you know, through my group, through the Let Kashmir Decide group, we had contacts globally, contacts nationally, people that were already, you know, it's like Mary said, the Kashmiris are there encouraging, supporting, embracing, recognizing that you're here to help bring the human rights atrocities to highlight, you know, the United Nations, the articles and charters that aren't being met, the resolutions that aren't being honored. So to be embraced and supported in that way, it's just raising the Kashmiri voices higher. Like Mary, you know, contact from many people, and it's the on-ground human stories that actually touch the heart and keep you going. So for me, it was the ones where they couldn't contact their family. You know, could you imagine right now you cannot contact your family? People outside Kashmir who couldn't contact their family. And I know people that had to give up their jobs, you know, and they're living to go home to find out how their family were. And then so to lose, you know, their existence. And obviously now with Kashmir the way it is and the crisis and the lack of jobs and everything, they're then struggling back within their lives. And the families that have to run in the night when, you know, the fear of the army coming, and it's all those stories. And I've tried to often think, you know, that could be, imagine your next door neighbor, you're seeing soldiers outside their door, you're hearing the women being raped. Just because it's not happening on our doorstep and it's not happening to our neighbor, that doesn't mean we shouldn't get involved and we shouldn't. So my journey's very been much led on a heart-based, you know, it's a heart-led journey and trying to learn and support as much as I can. It is very complex. As Mary said, the whole issue is very complex and there are many narratives. So keeping it to, what we need to do is bring this to international awareness, to support those that are working at the diplomatic level, bring the people to their cause. So we need to reach mainstream media as well. I think that has to be, when you talk about the events and what we're achieving so far, I think that's where we're striving for now. It's really grown. It's got a good base. It's got a lot of support with people with a lot of power and a lot of reach, and that's where we need to go. I think maybe talking too soon about our next step, but that's ultimately where we all need to go with it. It needs to come out to the people and get the people power.
Yeah. I mean, I've been part of this for last 30 years, but this is for the first time that I can see that voices of Kashmiris have actually gone beyond their own circles.
Yes.
The maximum reach of those voices previously was to MPs or to some activists, but I think for the first time I can see that they have gone beyond and to general public in different countries. So what activities you think have been proved more effective? Obviously, I know that there's so much being done, and for last 2 years, many things, many initiatives, many activities were organized. But what, in your view, have been more effective? Mary, I'll start with you.
Which tactics or which methods?
Which activities, which practices were more effective to make more people aware, and particularly the people in the position of influence becoming more engaged?
Well, I think that the primary tribute here should be to Kashmiri activists who are now banned from social media under pain of being interrogated and arrested and incarcerated. But I think that it cannot be underestimated, the work that Kashmiri activists did and human rights activists did on Twitter and Facebook and other social media venues in educating about who they were and what their struggle was all about. Because I don't think most of us would be here. Certainly I don't know where you learned about it, Claire, but I wouldn't be here were it not for those activists on social media, because I've learned immensely from them and the resources that they gave me and the resources that they pointed me to or referred me to. So I think all due must be given to them, even though now Modi and his government are doing everything possible to exclude them from social media. Even Claire, I don't mean even Claire, but Claire, who is one of the most prominent voices for non-Kashmiris, how many times has she been suspended from Twitter, now permanently, and also from Facebook? And it's a tribute to how effective she is in speaking in support of the Kashmiri struggle. But she's one of hundreds and hundreds of Kashmiris who have been suspended and blocked from. Syed Ali, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, Jalani, was permanently suspended from Facebook in 2016 for a one-sentence tribute to Burhan Wani. But there have been hundreds of other unknown Kashmiri activists, and they don't just take their suspension and sit down. They're very savvy about computer use and stuff, and so they try to find another way to set up a new account, and that one gets shut down, and then they try another way, and that one gets shut down. That's why on Twitter you'll see that Kashmiris who are on have 25 friends or 100 friends or whatever, because they keep getting closed down and they keep trying to come back so they can promote and explain about their struggle. So I think that that our work is to continue where, of course, we're being shut down now too, but our work is to try to continue the work that they did because it was so effective. So Claire is a brilliant organizer, so she may have other tactics that are as valuable.
Yeah, Claire, you want to add something?
I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with Mary, actually, you know, and I've always said in my journey along this, if it hadn't been for all the work the Kashmiris have done for the last 73 years, kept that alive, kept all that knowledge, you know, and I've learned, it's probably still so much that I don't know, but for me, what I learned, what was being done as the diplomatic level, what was helping, what wasn't helping. And, you know, it was meeting, every person I met gave me a connection to somebody else. Every person I met was able to put across their thoughts, their beliefs, their research. I learned from that. You know, they were also able to recognize other people's opinions and beliefs and see that this divide and rule has also had a really big impact in there. So very much the different organizations, whoever they are, wherever they are, and individual Kashmiris. I mean, I came to this work initially through discussion on MP sites. You know, then we set up Kashmir Decide with somebody in Azad. We then reached out to people around the world to join this movement, and because of them then having contacts to others, and it's then about the communication and people reaching out for us. So I've only learned actually since we started the Red for Kashmir campaign how much is being done, for example, in South Africa. There is huge support in South Africa based on what people have been doing for the last 20 years there. There's, you know, everything. So being on the radio there is an opportunity that wouldn't have been there had people not done this work. The same within the UK, had people not continued their work in their place. And I think what we want to see is people not working in isolation. You know, share your work, comment to us, what are you doing? Who are you? Where are you? One lady that's with the Let Kashmir Decide organisation is part of Stand With Kashmir Australia, and she holds events in 3 different cities. And it's good to know that. It's good to know what people are doing where and to take this forward themselves. So as Mary said, this isn't, you know, we're spokespeople for this really, and we've tried to just fan the flames, raise the issues for everybody to come out Red for Kashmir, for everybody to speak. And for Kashmir is, you know, the standing in solidarity was really a huge part of this, to keep the confidence built, I think. So it's a whole mixture of things. It's previous work that's been done. It's the Kashmiris' ability to reach out to people and embrace us and you know, show us the best way forwards. And you know, all part of it. I mean, Shams, I'm seeing how well you've laid out this show today as well. It's fantastic. You know, the lines going across the bottom, you're showing the Twitter storms, you're showing, and all these different means of people doing their own part. And it's us keeping the links with the people that are doing that so that we know where's the Twitter storm, how can we join, how can we support, you know, what Facebook page should we join, how can we know, which is worth mentioning. We do have a Facebook page called Red for Kashmir, where we're trying to share the posts and information, so if people could find us there, that would be wonderful. But yeah, that's similar to Mary's really, and the connections.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of this social media bans, I mean, is there anything which people can do about it? Because it seems at the moment, you know, the nation states dictate, and you know, people who are fighting even illegal occupations, they are branded as you know, terrorists. And if you share their names or photos, like in Kashmiri case, if you share Makbul Bhatt's photo, Afzal Guru's photo, Burhan Wani's photo, they are you know, their account is suspended. So is there any forum emerging in the world to deal with these kind of issues?
It's a problem. It's a problem because as Claire, as hundreds of Kashmiris have been suspended from Twitter and from Facebook, and now Claire is permanently banned from Twitter. It's you know, we're all sort of waiting for the other shoe to drop in terms of that, and yet we have now found a new way to collaborate with people who are on the front lines of oppression. We have a new way to collaborate with them, and we're not really willing to let that go. So I've been thinking about this recently, because we all wonder when we're going to be permanently suspended. I mean, Satya was a very outspoken Indian supporter of Kashmir for many years, and he was permanently banned from Facebook for no reason. I mean, that's true of Kashmiris are suspended right and left permanently, some just temporarily, but they're suspended right and left. So we have to, I think, figure out what we're going to do, because we really can't lose this international connection that we have. It's a vital lifeline for the oppressed. And so I think we need to figure it out. You know, these corporations control social media, and it's an issue that we have to think about. I once tried to figure out if we could sue, if we could litigate because of freedom of speech. And most people say, well, it's a private corporation and you are not, you know, they're thinking inside the box. It's a private corporation and you cannot sue a private corporation. Well, the union movement has something to say about that, because corporations are private companies, and the unions made inroads into their rights in these different workplaces, including the right of speech. Now, it isn't necessarily enforced very fully, especially in this day and age of weak trade unionism. But in the past, workers gained rights within a workplace. And so I think that thinking outside the box, if we could find civil liberties lawyers willing to take that on, it's an issue that we are denied civil liberties, that Palestinians and Kashmiris, supporters like Claire, are systematically suspended from social media. We should fight for our rights, and it should be litigated. That doesn't mean that, you know, like in India and Kashmir, they close down the internet every time they see any kind of resistance brewing, or they want to shut Kashmiris out. So they shut the internet down. So governments and these corporations can collaborate to shut us down at any point in time. But that's a concern not just for Kashmiris and Palestinians, but for all of us in struggles that we have. So I think we need to think about how we're going to fight for our right to free speech, or find alternative venues where we can continue to collaborate, because we cannot lose this lifeline to those who are on the front lines.
Yeah. Claire, you have to add something to this because you are going through it at the moment.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, there's so much going on at the moment. And so to take on the Twitter and Facebook one, like my head might explode. But I think something does need to be done. And somebody was messaging the other day, and obviously, you know, to be in the UK and to be silenced, there's probably, we could raise enough awareness to get this for UK media. It's quite, you know, and I'll not be the only UK activist silenced. And I think this is like my 6th Twitter account now. You know, I lost my work one as well, and I didn't even use my work one for Kashmiri work. So it's an issue. I like Mary's ideas there. I think the other ones are like alternative platforms. So I know there's a platform called MeWe that's not Facebook. It's, you know, humanitarian friendly. It's getting a slow build up for people now, but that could also be something moving forward for the future. It's an issue. I know for me at the moment, I haven't got the the headspace to think, right, how am I going to tackle that one? But it's certainly not right. It's not fair. I mean, I'm not rude. I'm not vulgar. I just show what's there. And it's because I've spoken up for the Kashmiris, and that, you know, we've got the Indian.
I wonder what is the position of human rights organizations on this, you know, like Amnesty and Liberty and all other organizations which actually resist this kind of silencing of people for having different views, or for resisting the state oppression.
Well, like Claire said, it's a very daunting thing. The litigation around it would be a massive international effort. You know, cost a fortune to do it. And I don't know if we have very many civil liberties lawyers that have the time or the ability to take on that kind of project. But like Claire says, short of doing that, short of taking on freedom of speech on social media, we might consider other venues, because we can't solve everything today, but we cannot lose that connection that we had, including it would give Kashmiris who have been banned right and left from other venues, it would give them a place where we could again talk to each other. Like Claire, we learned invaluable amounts of things from Kashmiris. I mean, from their posts and from their observations and their all sorts. We just learned so much, and so we don't want to lose that. And maybe we should think of getting people to not abandon Twitter or Facebook, but to also take up.
I'm sure there are people all around the world who are facing this, who are speaking against the states and facing this. But yeah, I think that is something we probably will see some people coming forward to challenge that in future. And I think that is a contestation, that is a struggle in itself in a new virtual space. But coming back to Red for Kashmir, what activities have been organized? I mean, I can see there is some activities are being shown here, but can you explain what is going to happen on 5th of August to 2021?
Claire, you take this first.
Okay, go on.
Okay, all right. So at the very basic level, what everybody can do is to turn their profiles red. Whoever they are, wherever they are, anybody can do this. Anybody that's not even by day a Kashmiri activist, they can stand in solidarity and raise awareness by turning their profiles red. Even if that's all somebody did, that would be a start. That would be something. So then the next stage is to post something about Kashmir, a quote, or yourself wearing something red or showing something red. Make red the theme. Take a post, upload it to your Facebook and Twitter and Instagram with the hashtag Red for Kashmir, and then that will be at the central bank. People can go on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook and search hashtag Red for Kashmir, reshare, retweet, see all these images that are uploaded. So if people are at protests, they could take a photo of the protest. Every post, hashtag Red for Kashmir. So that's on the social media site. Obviously, there'll be a Twitter storm as well on the day. That's yet to be advertised, but will be this, big global support for that as well. On the streets, where we're at the moment is looking for people to create their own protests, their own demonstrations where they can with the organizations that they have. So I do know that there is one at the moment organized for outside the White House at 2 o'clock I think it's actually on the 5th of August at 2 o'clock. At the moment for London, it's in talks, and there are talks about having something from Parliament. For Glasgow as well, hopefully it's in the process of being organised. We're looking to have a car rally from Glasgow to the Parliament at Edinburgh. It's about a 40-minute drive, longer if we're going really slow. But it's about the visual impact that people can see and getting the message out there, as well as actually taking our message to Parliament. We're hoping that people will join us from across the UK. We're looking at that being the weekend before the 5th. So we've got something to share on social media, something to advertise, hopefully something that media will come and write about, even if it's the local newspapers or wherever we can reach. I know, again, that, big organizations, there's somebody they're looking at Brussels, the United Nations, so outside the European Parliament in Brussels, Geneva, and there was somewhere else mentioned as well. And they're all just gathering together now. People at Canada as well. I think Toronto was another one. We're fairly confident there'll be one in New York. But I think it's a case of keeping an eye on the Red for Kashmir campaign, or even other Kashmiri activists, seeing what protests they're doing, where they're doing. We're kind of, because we're a movement and raising Kashmiri voices, we don't have the full capacity ourselves to organize the big event and everything that it involves, and the finances. We're just volunteers for the cause, really. So we'd be hoping to reach those that do have the ability to to raise the profiles, raise the events. And we, of course, will be sharing as soon as we know what's being arranged where. That will be well broadcast.
Fantastic. So a lot of activities are happening. Yeah, Mary, go on.
I wanted to say something about when we first started thinking about this. We were facing the COVID pandemic, so it seemed to us that it would be primarily a social media based event and not a street protest. But now, whether it's wise or not, there's been a great relaxation of the COVID protocols, at least in the United States, and I think probably in other countries, whether or not it's premature or not. But there's been a great relaxation, and we saw with the siege of Gaza that there were hundreds of thousands in protests. So people are willing, and also Black Lives Matter. People are willing to protest if they feel ardently about it. So we don't know at this point. We haven't done the kind of preparatory work everywhere that we would have done if we thought it would have a lot of street protests. But we know, like, Claire has done a lot of work, and I think maybe South Africa would. I don't know. They're so advanced in their solidarity.
Yeah. Could I cut in there again with a couple of things that I've remembered that are also ongoing? Shams, there is also, and this is from volunteers, human rights volunteers that have put this together. There is a competition where the prize money is £1,000 for people to compile a video of a minute in length to get the message across about the Kashmiris, the human rights abuses, the right for self-determination, the need to demilitarize, in a minute video clip that can be shared. We're looking again, it was through the youth, through TikTok, through Likey, any Instagram. If they look for one of the posters, it would be on the Red for Kashmir site, and all you need to do is send the links to where you've posted your video to the number, and there will be then a judging panel that is going to, the criteria's on there. There's a judging panel for that. There is also driven from South Africa a poetry competition. There's a children's, I think it's a writing competition or a drawing competition. They're out there as well. I don't think I've posted them out yet, but that's coming forward. And that's something like 100 prize, or it's £100. And I think some might be divvied for first, second and third, aiming at school children. And I think that it was a fantastic idea, because Kashmiris are poets, they're born poets. We see it in their art and everything. So it's an opportunity if they can find their ways forward to participate in that, and Kashmiri diaspora and anybody, and it will reach out to places we can't reach. We have recognized because of COVID, we were hoping to get in at students' movements before Red for Kashmir, to get into universities and engage all the university students, but COVID stopped that. So that's a weapon further ahead for us still. And obviously by creating the videos and the competitions, writing competitions, we can reach out to hopefully students and people that way that will embrace this and share this on, and then hopefully join us, at protests around the 5th of August.
Can I say one thing? Oh. You're on mute, Sham.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yes, I wanted to say one thing. I think we need to think about, there are many Kashmiris who are involved in this campaign who could easily do a panel on August 5th, or give a talk on August 5th, or do a forum or whatever, because what we want to be very clear is, we want people to understand the issues of occupation. We want them to understand mass rape as a weapon of war. We want them to use forced disappearance as a weapon of war, where 8,000 Kashmiris have been forcibly disappeared in the last, since I think 1989. We want them to understand the use of pellet guns and other lethal weapons against unarmed protesters. We want them to understand these search and cordon, or what do you call them, cordon and search operations, where they come in with bazookas and high-powered rifles into residential neighborhoods and torch the homes, vandalize the homes, kill unarmed protesters or injure them with pellet guns, kill livestock. We want them to understand those issues of occupation and to have a clear understanding of what's going on. And we want that to come out of this day of solidarity. We want them to understand what Kashmiris, like Claire said, what moves any of us to do this kind of work is that we hate the sight of human suffering. It's unbearable to us. And we can do something about it. So we want people to understand what Kashmiris are living through on a daily basis. And we want that to, hopefully that will come with Kashmiris who will just go on social media and give a talk or have a panel or whatever. It can be a regular activist, very eloquent, or it could be an academic. We don't care. We want the issues raised.
Just speak out on that day. Just speak out whoever you are.
Yes.
Some
Brilliant.
are being built already. I know. Yeah, I know the Scottish Human Rights Forum in Scotland. They're planning one already, and also activists or organisation down in London was discussing one. So it's starting to build. So yes, anybody, anywhere. And as Mary said, you know, these stories, these poems, these videos, and we're sharing lots. They're telling the stories. They're, you know, we've even all those things there that Mary said. They're at the crux of this. We're even looking at the environmental impact. You know, we've got glaciers melting at one hell of a rate. We've got deforestation going on. Within a few years, we could have the problem of, you know, lack of water. People can't get in just now and research the effects properly. I mean, what is going on, as we know, and this is why we're here, you know, it's genocide and it's huge suffering, and it shouldn't be happening. And we need to, now that governments are coming out of their COVID blinkers, I think, you know, it's prime time to, you know, they can't keep hiding. They can't keep shutting this down. They need to stand up, and that's what we want. We want the people to raise, you know, the voices from Kashmir. Here's what's happening. This is what we need to do, and here's how we're going to stop it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mary Scully and Claire Bidwell, for being with us and explaining all this about Red for Kashmir and Kashmiri people and diaspora. And I hope that on the August 5th, there will be a campaign world over in all its forms, and people will speak out on that day in whatever way, form and shape they can do. And now, because it's 8 o'clock now, and I am in England, and it's 7th of July, and it's England playing now in a minute. So this is all we had for this show. Thank you very much again, and thank you very much for watching and all the comments. And hopefully see you soon. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.